Good afternoon, everyone. For those who just joined us, my name is Professor Ryan Koh. I'm the Chair and Director of AustCyber, as well as the Deputy Head of School External Engagement for School of ITEE at UQ. First, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners and their custodianship of the land where all of us are on, especially in Australia, where UQ is. We pay our respects to the elders, past, present, and emerging, who continue the cultural and spiritual connections to country. So it's my pleasure to be your panel chair today for this very exciting topic, which I'm also quite active in the research areas in, which is on automating cybersecurity incident response for critical infrastructure. Before I begin, I would like to just introduce the speakers. First, we have Associate Professor Dan Long Seong Kim. He's an Associate Professor at AustCyber, and prior to UQ, he was a faculty member in cybersecurity at the Department of Computer Science and Software Engineering at the University of Canterbury, Christchurch in New Zealand, and from 2011 to 2018. From 2008 to 2011, he was a postdoc at Duke University in USA, and he was a visiting scholar at the University of Maryland, College Park in the US in 2007. His research interests are in cybersecurity and dependability of various systems and networks. And you can visit his website if you have intent and can find out more about his research work on the link. Our next speaker here at UQ is Dr. David Stockdale, Director of AustCyber, and also Deputy Director of ITS at UQ. So David is the Director of AustCyber and one of the oldest computer emergency response team. Yeah. He's not one of the oldest, but the organization is one of the oldest cyber incident response teams in the world, and a not-for-profit based at UQ. So he's also responsible for the IT infrastructure, data services, and operational security at UQ. AustCyber is a member-based cert that provides incident response, cyber threat intelligence, and training to many Australian agencies and companies. So in an age where cybersecurity is on the agenda, from the boardroom to the shop floor, he's a firm believer that security is everyone's business. He advocates for security is job zero and is everyone's responsibility. So exploring new markets, delivering new products, and delivering services that clients truly value as are strong drivers for David. David is passionate about the opportunities that public cloud services such as AWS and Azure bring to organizations, including UQ. Our next speaker is Mr. K. Kwok, Head of Talent. Hello.
Yes, I am ready.
Yep, okay. And he is the Head of Talent at CTI Group of S2W. His main research is on the threat intelligence field, and he was previously adjunct professor at Song Kyung Kwan University. He currently acts as a member of the National Police Agency Cybercrime Advisory Committee. He's also the main author of the threat intelligence report, Campaign Rifle and Dario, the Maiden of Anguish, published in 2017. In this report, he was the first to attribute the threat actor and Dario, a state-sponsored APT group, Advanced Persistent Threat Group, which was not discovered in the past. He's a very prominent speaker and has spoken at various international conferences such as Black Hat Europe, Black Hat Asia, Kaspersky, SAS, HitCon, HackSec, and many, many more. Thank you, Mr. Kwok. And last but not least, we have Ms. YK Lee, Senior Director of AI Spera. Ms. YK is a Senior Director of AI Spera. Her role is to identify and close strategic upselling opportunities by understanding core client business needs, manage and development of new investment opportunities and relationships, and to support the evolution, integration, and implementation of strategies, systems, and processes to meet the rapid growth of the businesses and target attainment. She also works closely with product marketing revenue teams to constantly optimize efforts relating to company-wide goals. So let's put our hands together to welcome this panel with us. Thank you. I was wondering, since, would you mind if Mr. Kwok start first? Yeah. So since he has already started sharing the screen, Mr. Kwok, would you like to give I'm going to give you the format of this session, because this is an exciting topic and we want to hear more from the audience, and if you have questions about automation of critical cyber incident response for critical infrastructure, please do so. So we're gonna do a 20 minutes introductions. So each speaker will either be speaking about their roles and their background and what their organizations are doing in terms of critical infrastructure, cybersecurity. And then, so 5 minutes each. After that, we'll open up to two initial questions, which I will be asking, and then we'll be opening up questions from the floor. Okay. So, Mr. Kwok, over to you. 5 minutes overview of your organization and yourself. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, now I will start. Okay, hello, I'm K Kwok, and thanks for having me here. I'm going to briefly talk about some cases related to supply chain attack in South Korea, which were conducted by state-sponsored threat actors. Okay, first of all, I will introduce the company, S2W, about what we are doing and what kind of solutions we have. Basically, we collect lots of data from various channels, including deep dark web, social media, cryptocurrency transaction flow, and so on. And after that, we extract valuable intelligence from massive data to provide actionable insight to our customers. Okay, we have basically three solutions. In case of Jarvis, yes, from Iron Man, we provide this solution to public sector and private sector as well. Recently, Interpol made a contract to use Jarvis to gain numerous intelligence, such as indicators of compromise, dark web user profiling data, and actionable intelligence about cyber criminals. Next one is EYES. With this solution, customer can get cryptocurrency intelligence. We have our own engine to traverse cryptocurrency transaction flow. Last one is Truth. This solution fundamentally analyzes internal corporate data from a data science perspective. This can detect fraudulent transactions or even detect counterfeit goods. And also, we are focusing on collaborate with various law enforcement, such as Interpol and Europol and many other. And of course, we are tightly collaborate with our own government as well. Recently, Interpol announced that S2W supported Interpol and many law enforcement to arrest Club ransomware gang. Some of criminals in this gang has been arrested recently. Okay, now let me tell you about some cases of supply chain attack in South Korea. If you don't mind, please can you pause the recording now? Because I'm going to share.
A fantastic overview. Thanks for sharing. So next we have Associate Professor Dan Kim, and then followed by Ms. YK Lee, and then followed by Dr. Davis.
Can you see my screen well?
I think yes. So we'll have Ms. YK Lee share first before we get off the Associate Professor.
Sorry, I took the turn. My apologies.
It's okay.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. I just wanted to. I didn't blur my background because I'm in a very vibrant cybersecurity startup, and I hope you could see what's going on. It's people running around, walking around all the time. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is YK Lee, not a doctor. I'm one of the few who are not doctor here. The Senior Business Development Director from AustCyber, cybersecurity startup. I'm very honored to be invited here today to this prestigious gathering of scholars and industry veterans from Australia and South Korea. So when I was looking through the materials to match with the topic, the security threats to supply chain and critical infrastructure, I encountered several topics, not just from newspapers, but our own spider web of monitoring as well, our own solutions. So please let me start with sharing some examples with you. The first example, of course, North Korea successfully stole Korea Atomic Energy Research Institute called CARI, aka CARI. The employees' personal information, address, phone numbers, emails, especially for the core team around R&D for critical technology. The hackers penetrated into the institute using VPN vulnerability, and access log shows that 13 different unauthorized IP addresses gained access to the internet internal network through the VPN. So, and through our own security data search engine called Criminal IP, I looked up all the VPN network available in Korea by typing in SSL VPN Korea. Total 2,102 VPNs are online as of yesterday, which means they are open to public, and which is not supposed to be. And some of the VPNs we can see they are not properly protected, and only if someone from CARI typed in the IP addresses they have, they could have predicted what will happen to them in the future. So I got interested in seeing whether Australian VPNs are properly protected. I typed in SSL VPN country Australia. And as of yesterday, 1,459 VPNs were being used and widely open to the public. And around 10% of them were not properly protected because they're under blind spots. Companies don't know even their vulnerabilities are open to the public. Most companies don't have full understanding of where their vulnerabilities are actually. So one of the other points of penetration called RDP, Remote Desktop Protocol, the screen has been also captured by our solution called Criminal IP, and it shows the results of RDP around the world. And some of the results are shocking to have even administrators' names on it and accounts name, other available accounts name on it as well. One of the visible results of RDP from the University Research Institute called INHA, and not only a page looks easily penetratable, but it also says the system needs to be updated right now, which puts this page more vulnerable for the hackers to penetrate into the page. So this is not just RDP protocol exposed outside, but this provides the ground for hackers to be able to attack whichever surfaces they want. So, and this is exactly why companies should pay more attention to roots of the attack, AKA attack surface management, so to speak. Once RDP is open, it easily leads to another RDP crack within the system. RDP worm and SSH worms contain whichever they have context. So on your right side, again, the search result of RDP protocols all over the world by using our search engine called Criminal IP. Total 566,000 cases had RDP access issues. Their ports are open and 10% of them are actual vulnerable, they have actual vulnerability. So on the table on the bottom, the statistics of universities all over the world, which have RDP vulnerability issues. They have 2 Korean universities on the list, but fortunately no Australian universities on the list. And another root for vulnerability comes from MS Exchange mail server. Even US White House urges Microsoft to fix the problem. Despite Microsoft issuing the patches, 50% of the Exchange servers are still vulnerable. Over half of the exposed Exchange servers are still vulnerable to a severe bug that allows authenticated attackers to execute code remotely with system privileges. Also, our research engine results, the number of organizations with not properly protected mail server vulnerabilities, schools, medical institutes, hospitals, banks, governments, and law firms. There are hundreds of them. The world is getting more digitalized, and new digital IoT devices come with their own unique IP address, which means they are penetratable. The images here are from web cameras searched through our also search engine called Criminal IP. For example, if your home CCTV is not properly protected, hackers can see your puppies together with you as well through the lenses while you don't know about it. Supervisor control and data acquisition, aka SCADA. It is easily mistaken that SCADA is separated from a network, but as long as they are wired with IP, they are also hackable. So one of the example is Site All Met gasoline supply management system, supplied to thousands of gasoline stations all over the world, and a total 35,000 stations are using this management system. If the bad hacker decide to set on a fire in a gas station, that can happen through this vulnerability. And according to our research results, more than 10,000 stations expose this kind of vulnerability. And this is quite severe, which can happen anytime today. Another vulnerable point, domains. I took examples from Binance.com, the big and popular cryptocurrency exchange company. The first suspicious URL on your middle side, Binance.com, especially just created by a hacker and never publicly launched. So, this popular malicious URL filtering solutions like Blue Code, WebSense, Palo Alto were not even able to capture it. So the problem in general we have concluded is many of the organizations are not sure of status of their overall exposures, and they are not sure what should be the decisions and actions. So right now, basically, the attackers outpace the old simple patches. And even more unfortunately, the patches of response-oriented security paradigm is very expensive, requires much human resources, costly, inefficient, and puts a lot of pressure, not to mention puts a lot of pressure on each security team of the organizations. The solutions we think, the good and solid cyber threat intelligence, aka CTI, we believe it can reduce astronomical costs that we are pouring into this current paradigm system, and we can set up a new paradigm for the security, and at least we believe so. This is quite lengthy description on how each organization is set up currently to monitor the attack surface management, and this requires 21st hours nonstop continuous security monitoring, server IP address port scan, identify vulnerabilities based on collected information, checking domain authentication during the operation, phishing, malicious codes inspection, all have been done manually. But even after such manual check, it is difficult to make a decision whether this IP is actually malicious or not, because we don't have the dependable CTI based on AI technologies. So we as a company have decided to make all this very simple. AustCyber have built up a cyber threat intelligence called Criminal IP. Criminal IP is a cyber threat intelligence system that provides information about account theft, identity theft, malicious code disseminator by searching fraudulent IP addresses and domain information. It also provides security information such as malicious and threat information history found for a certain period of time from a specific IP address, and provides risk scores. And based on CTI engine, the automated monitoring system can enhance organizational resilience by reducing the speed of security threat defense and increase accuracy. The automated security monitoring can replace manual tasks that SOC analysts generally perform, such as threat analysis. The integration of automated security control is growing increasingly within the defense system of the cybersecurity ecosystem. This is how we suggest companies to have a better overview of their security vulnerability inside one of our products called RMR, Risk Management Report. The main functions include port monitoring. This allows you to periodically monitor open ports on your network, because these days everything is wired with IP addresses. By simply checking through the IP addresses, you can easily understand where the vulnerabilities are on your organizations. And second main function, domain monitoring. This allows you to periodically monitor similar domains in the domains that users registered. And by providing risk management reports, literally, it allows you to periodically detect the enterprise's IT assets infringement by providing a report based on the monitoring results from domains, keywords, IP addresses, vulnerability that a user holds. And finally, I would like to briefly introduce our team. From a previous session, diversity mentioned, and I'm very proud to say our company has achieved diversity in terms of age, gender, demographic backgrounds. Majority of the workforce has recently joined as female, coming from a different background, which is contributing tremendously to building a stronger team and drive business far and further based on the uniqueness coming from each one of them. And this picture is that laid out our partners in each prominent industry. We have achieved positive early transactions with major Korean companies. One thing very proud, the biggest security solution company called Anlep in Korea have chosen us as their source of CTI, and the biggest national intelligence company chose us as well as for their CTI partner quite recently. And one of the biggest fintech company called Upbit chose us. And the working with them required so much fast transactions, easy integration. We all have achieved those, and they have chosen us for the last 3 years, and they just recently renewed their contract. And thank you for listening. Thank you for your time. Hope you enjoyed my side of the story. Please feel free to ask any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Roger.
So today, can you hear me? Well, okay. Today I'm going to talk about how we can automate the security and resilience analysis for critical infrastructure. So compared to the previous two talks, they have shown very concrete examples of what they have found. My talk is more about research and development. So you might think that it's a little bit drier than previous two talks. So this is my background. I've been doing cybersecurity research since 2001. So we are relying on critical infrastructure, for our daily lives. So there are many threats. So cyber threats, physical threats, and the climate threats. According to the U.S. White House briefing, very recent one, threats to the critical infrastructure can hamper our daily lives. And this shows a critical infrastructure and their interdependencies somewhat, so that you can see that energy, critical infrastructure entities are all connected with others. Also, others are dependent on energy, critical infrastructure. So once one of the critical infrastructure is compromised or attacked by cyber attacks, then it can result in very critical impact on other infrastructures. And when I saw the characteristics of cyber attacks on the CIs, from very first one, 1982, for the pipeline attack, to the recent ones, there are mainly four characteristics. First one is the threat actors are very strong. They are state-sponsored or organized hacking group, or they are cyber criminals. They want to seek for financial economic benefits from these attacks. The second one is that there are IPT attacks, advanced persistent threats. They keep trying until they succeed in compromising target assets. And they are using also multi-attack vectors. Not only the social engineering using malicious USB, which include malware, also they're using spear phishing. It means that it's a fabricated and manipulated email targeting for a specific person. And they also use DDoS attacks, and they try to find zero-day vulnerabilities by exploitation of vulnerabilities as well. And recently, ransomware is also a target of the target of the attacks, and they want to gain economic benefits from this. The third characteristic of this one is the cyber and physical attacks. In the several decades ago, it's mostly cyber attacks, but now not only to cyber attack to the IT systems, but also they are targeting for operation technology, using targeting RTU and other devices that they are used for the physical systems. Also, they are targeting physical components as well, such as the sensors and actuators. So the physical attacks can result in the unavailability of cyber component. Also, cyber attack also make physical component unavailable and disrupted and distorted. The last characteristic is that their targets are diverse. So I have listed some of them. So the very first one is the well-known Stuxnet, targeting for nuclear facility. And then power grid in Ukraine, and the water system, and gas pipelines, and so on. So this I haven't listed all of those, but so we cannot limit to specific critical infrastructure only. They are targeting everything, whenever they have possible threat vectors. And for this one, I've been doing the cyber game, like a game. So I named it as a game. So first is a graphical security model, and the second is AI security and the security for AI. And third is M, is the moving target defense. The last one is evolving attack and defense automation and evaluation. And this shows that what I'm doing. So first, if ICT systems are given or any critical infrastructures, for example, ICS or SCADA system, then we collect data about that. Some of this is overlapped with the two companies' products. We are collecting data from the networks and also ICS. So what are the vulnerability information? What are the potential attacks and threats? What are the current mitigation and detection and prevention technologies? Then we can build a model like this one. So I listed two simple models here. So one is attack graph, and the other is attack trees. This can capture attackers' behaviors. Also, this can capture to decide which is the optimal countermeasure given system, attack, and defense scenarios, and apply that idea to the systems. So this is an iterative process. Over the years, I tried to develop this, automated this one, and then instead, in addition to this one, I try to automate the evolution of cyber attack generations using MITRE's ATT and CK as a framework. And the second one is that a lot of these systems are adopting AI techniques to automate some routine jobs, or maybe to detect intrusions happening in the ICTS system, and also operational technology and critical infrastructure in general. Then can we generate cyber attacks to the AI? And also can we come up with idea how to develop defense against cyber attacks to AI as research? And then can you develop global defense techniques? And can you develop optimal defense technology using AI planning, this model, and the reinforcement learning? That's the research area I've been working on. And this is not the product I'm selling. This is the software we developed for capturing different attack paths of attackers. So here the black dots represent the attacker, and all other nodes are nodes in this IT system, and their vulnerabilities are represented as colors. So here, red color represent they are very severe nodes with high security vulnerabilities. And we can also show that different types of matrices and the statistical information about the network. And for the AI, so we try to develop a technique to generate practical attacks to the state-of-the-art network intrusion detection system for Internet of Things. And this shows that how we do that. And this shows one example of that. So the red line represent the threshold value that attack is detected as an anomaly in using autoencoder based anomaly detection engines. And if we use our techniques, and we can lower the intensity of attacks, and we can bypass the detection of attacks. And this is called evasion attacks. And third one is a moving target defense as a part of a proactive defense. So if we change the attack surface of systems in a timely manner, then we can confuse attackers then we can increase the security of systems. Especially, we want to try to adopt moving target diffs to protect the ICS in the critical infrastructure against advanced cyber attacks. This way. And so one of the possible solution is to apply the virtual IP shuffling technique using SDN to ICS. And we can apply this technique to ICS, and then also we can combine this moving target diffs technique with the detection, so that based on the detection of ongoing intrusions, we can customize MTE techniques based on the type of attacks. Then the security of the system will be improved. Last one is the evolving attack automation. So a lot of the problem happens when we do not have enough data sets about APT attacks. So the previous two companies, they can collect vulnerability information about ports and IP addresses. Also, they can do the threat intelligence by doing attribution of groups, APT groups, and so on. So can we then generate global attacks so that we can detect such attacks, also prevent them, also respond to the source attacks? That's the main goal of this one. So by supported by the ADD in South Korea, so we conducted one research about how to generate cyber attacks automatically and use them for other purposes, to train the cyber soldiers, also test the resiliency of the target systems and the defenders teams. And then we want to provide ATT and CK-based APT attack generation for ICS. This is ongoing work. Also, MITRE's defense framework and AI planning to generate defense technique for ICS. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
David's update from us.
Thank you very much. And thank you to all the other presenters so far. So a little bit about AustCyber. We're not doing it as a presentation, but AustCyber existed as a computer emergency response team, although we call ourselves cyber emergency response team now, for about 28 years. We're the second oldest in the world. Debatable whether CERT US was the second and we were third, but we will go with second. We like to claim second place. After Carnegie Mellon set up the CERT CC. So what's our role? Well, our role is really to some extent, we were considered the national CERT in Australia up until about 10, 11 years ago. And at that stage, the federal government set up what was known as CERT Australia. So from there, we continue to operate, and we've operated as what we call a membership organisation, where we have approximately over 600 members now. So we take, it's a subscription system. Now, what do we actually do? We are traditionally a provider of cyber threat intelligence, and we provide incident response. Now, we don't pilot in people for large ransomware attacks or anything like that. We provide small incident response and support for companies. Now, this doesn't seem to put it bluntly, it doesn't seem quite as exciting as some of the research that we've heard today. And really that research exists at one end of the spectrum, where we're heading. Our search role is to try to just to provide support and deal with incidents that are happening and prepare people. So if we think about the protect, detect, respond and recover, we're certainly there at the sort of protect, we're certainly there at the respond, and we can support in some ways in recover. But really, we're about trying to prevent attacks happening for people, for our membership. Now, the other thing that CERT is very important is that there's two other things that are really important about CERTs. Is first of all, it's the network that we exist within. So we're proud to work with their CERT, the Korean CERT, and many other government national CERTs around the world. But just this year we published research from with CERT, with Korea CERT and Sri Lankan CERT and India and ourselves. So we look at the landscape of how it's evolving. We also are big on sort of building these networks, not just in the CERT communities, but further afield as well. So whether it's with industry or with government. And part of that is to really uplift people's knowledge and capabilities. So we have these wonderful systems that are coming along, and this great research that eventually will become productized, whether it's through startups or major initiatives from large companies. But really, we also have to help lift the people who are operating in this area. So one of the roles that AustCyber has is about education. So we provide education to groups of people about uplifting their capabilities. And Ryan kindly mentioned the fact that I believe that security is everybody's is job number one, really, or job zero, really, for everybody. And that's what I do believe in my own organisation that I work for, with the University of Queensland and with my IT people. It is really security is that number one job. So AustCyber is about building those networks. Now, if we talk about critical infrastructure, traditionally, AustCyber would not have operated recently in that critical infrastructure space. That would have been left up to what is now ACSC, which was CERT Australia, which morphed into ACSC. So traditionally, we wouldn't have operated too much in that space. Having said that, we do have clients who are in the critical infrastructure space, whether it's electricity supply companies, water or gas. But as Australia now moves into a new phase of what it considers to be critical infrastructure, which is actually nearly everything we can think about, including universities, then we're firmly placed in that critical infrastructure space and operating there. And I think, when we think about automation about that, it's automation. We automatically think about systems for automation. But really, it's also about people and processes. It's not just about the technology. And one of the best ways I think we can start to think about how can we actually protect critical infrastructure really well is about building networks. So if we think about the CERT network and how we pass information between CERTs around the world and how we assist each other. So if, for instance, we do a lot of phishing takedowns, we leverage that CERT network that we're part of to take phishing sites down from in other countries in Australia. But when we talk, again, coming back to that critical infrastructure piece, one of the areas that's going to be considered to be critical infrastructure is higher education. So what are we doing in that space? Well, actually, what we've done is we've built up a very, very strong network across all of higher education. Because I don't believe that really protection of critical infrastructure can just rely on, say, a federal agency or from diktats from abroad working down. It doesn't work like that. I think, to be honest, you need to protect critical infrastructure. You've got to think about which part of critical infrastructure you're in. You have to then think about who else is in that space with you and how can we work together to protect ourselves. And that's probably important. So that's what we've done in, say, higher education. We're also part of that in, say, banking as well. And we're working into some of the areas of utilities also. But if I look at higher education, we've created a very, very strong network where we share threat intelligence very, very quickly and effectively across the whole sector. So that information is needed, and some of that goes into processes and some of it goes into technology. So then the automation piece can happen in the traditional sense, but some of it's just about making sure that people are informed. So AustCyber, I believe, has got a strong role now in critical infrastructure, especially in Australia, because of the expansion of what is considered to be critical infrastructure. We will continue to utilise technology for automation, whether it's feeding threat intelligence for other functions, but we will strongly advocate for people and processes and the lifting of capability in people first and foremost. Thank you. Thank you.
Due to the time, I see a few entries on the chat. Let me just put it up here and see if we can get some questions from online, and then we'll get some questions from the audience. So we've got a question from Kamaraza to Prof. Kim. Thank you for your wonderful talk. Just wondering, how do you and your team validate the proposed software or app for vulnerability detection? Do you use any test bed for known vulnerability data sets?
So we use known vulnerability scanning tools, such as Nessus and OpenVS and Click datasets. And also we use real ICT systems consisting of more than 100 personal computers.
Thank you. Any questions from? Let's take a few turns. So we'll have audience. Any questions from the Korean side? Korea University campus.
I see none. Please go ahead. Keep this question. Thank you.
Sorry, can you say that again?
Yeah, we have no question from the floor. Thank you.
Okay, no questions from the floor. Any questions from here? No, then I have some questions in preparation, you know, just to, because I had some, so I have a question actually for YK. So I'm quite interested in your criminal IP service, but if I'm coming from the angle of say a business, you know, with maybe just one IT support guy, how do this one IT support person keep up with so much information, such as IP, criminal IP, and many other threat intelligence sites?
So if I understand your question correctly, how do we keep up with the technology of data collection to create such CTI? Did I understand your question correctly?
So how do we, CTI is great, but we may be overwhelmed by more and more CTI over time. So how do we, you know, how do users handle that? Do you have any advice?
Of course, the CTI system as a whole, it sounds very complicated. It requires a huge amount of data collection, processing, the filtering the data, which takes a lot of effort. And that's why not so many companies have been successful building up one CTI by themselves. So building one is quite complicated. It takes a lot of resources, investment. We somehow, AustCyber, and together with S2W, together with us, have been quite successful to build one, because you have to be dedicated to build one. But this is, again, the system is quite complicated, but how to use it, that's where our business model and the part for marketability comes from, how to make it easy for customers to use that. In our case, was to come up with two solutions called Criminal IP and Risk Management Report. The first product is kind of Google search engine for your security system. So if you're interested in, for example, you have certain IP track of IP addresses came into your system, which is kind of suspicious, like you think it is kind of hacking attempt. So you type in the IP addresses you have in your system. And if you type the IP addresses, that comes along with all sorts of information, where the IP addresses belong to, who is managing, who are the owner of the IP addresses, where the address is located. And not just the IP addresses, but it's related, it can be related to banner information, certificates, or exploit information, whether this IP address has bad history in the past or not. So how we do it is to simplify the solutions with very simple to use interface for users. And you just come into our website and type in the information that you have and have the information, the search results. That's how you use it for criminal IP. So we want to call it as Google version of security search engine. It's B2C business model. And RMR, which I briefly touch upon during the presentation, is that most companies, I was talking to the big companies like LG and SK on the other day, and they were like, we were talking together, and at the end of the conversation, they said, this is too complicated for me, so I have to hand it over to our CTO or CSO. That was their last remarks. That's how they are, not well informed about where this new paradigm of security. They are not really fully understand where their vulnerabilities are. So our second product called RMR Risk Management Report is ease out where your vulnerabilities are in your corporations and digital assets with IP addresses, by the IP addresses, domain addresses. And once you type in your company, keyword, you can even monitor where your company's keyword is exchanged on the dark web. So if I answered your questions correctly, yes, the building CTI is quite complicated, but what we do is that to make it simple as possible for users so that they can actually use that information and intelligence for their actual work.
Okay, thank you.
But to add more information to that, our founders our CEO is coming from online gaming industry. I myself come from online gaming industry. Even before all these simple payment solutions, cryptocurrency, we were the one who were fighting against the cyber crimes in a very early stage of 2000 something. And we experienced what kind of troubles the security officials were going through. And that's the result and fruits of our agony in the past, and we came up with these two products. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, your mention about online gaming brings back memories from World of Warcraft for me. And,
for me, World of Warcraft as well.
Yeah, I had a lot of time killing chickens. Yeah, and Mr. Kwok, I'd like to now ask you a question, because it was very interesting to see that you were doing attribution of different groups. So, for the benefit, because I think we have a lot of students and researchers here, do you have any advice on how to do attribution well?
Okay, it's a complicated question, but yeah, we have to divide several categories when you attribute some groups. For example, in code level perspective, you have to analyze encryption and encoding or decoding code, and then you have to create a kind of signature to detect some kind of code. And then after that, you have to have knowledge about infrastructure of attackers, for example, CNC servers, IP, domain, and then after that, you have to draw the similarity among those infrastructure. And then after that, maybe you can identify the actual criminal of these groups. By this information, you can cluster more clearly about these groups. Yes, that's it. Yeah.
Multiple sources of information, kind of like the threat and intelligence that YK also mentioned.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask the next question to Dr. Stockdale. Yeah. So I want to ask about the role of national certs and its the current role of also member-based certs as well. So how do they, do you have any tips for these organizations provide more or complementary value of vendors such as AustCyber and SKW?
Yeah, okay, thank you. So I think, first of all, we all know this is a growing field. It's actually growing exponentially. And that not one organization, whether it's a vendor or a national cert or a member or a commercial cert, not for profit as we are, can help deal with every problem. So, first of all, I think we have to start working together, and that's probably the key thing. I don't think there's often enough working together. I think we need to throw away the old ideals that we can work from a point at the very top and work down, and everything will be good. We have to work across all these types of organisations. I think in this case we should also throw away that consideration of competitiveness. So when we think about commercial companies, whether it's for-profit or not-for-profit, we sort of fall back to the idea that, it's all about making the money for my shareholders or returning into the organisation or whatever it might be. Let's throw away those concepts a little bit and start working, just collaborating a lot more. And I think we do see that in the security industry more than we do in other areas of IT, with certainly the vendor space. So there's a place for us all. There's a place for us to start talking a lot more. And the sooner that conversations grow to be, and again, coming back to that network idea, as soon as those conversations start coming to a really mature network and information and thoughts and ideas being shared, the stronger we'll be, and the more set up we will be to meet the adversary that we have, which is a very complex, intelligent, fast-moving adversary, and we're never going to beat. So we have to get our game together.
Thank you. So teamwork, right? It's
Very
like
much teamwork.
Like a football team, even though they may not be superstars, but they may not be players.
Very much so.
Yeah. Thank you. So I'm just going to ask one open question. If there are no questions from the floor, okay, so with all the information and the threat intelligence that we see today, this is like I don't know, it's like heaven for the cyber criminals. They have all the information to take down all this critical infrastructure. For example, they could just search for that 1,000 over Australian sites. So what's currently stopping these criminals from exploiting these vulnerabilities and problems? What's stopping the criminals? And I'll leave it to anyone wants to pick
I'll
up.
quickly think that it's like you're in a candy shop.
Yeah.
There's so much we can choose from, or they can choose from, that I think we're protected not through stealth. We're protected by just that it's such a noisy environment, I think.
Yeah, that's true. So we'll just go around the table. So after Professor Kim, and then Ms. Lee, and then Mr. Park.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of tools there as well, right? But
What's stopping them?
yeah, so I think the main point is that some of the networks are not fully connected. Maybe they do not have vulnerabilities that exploit. Or maybe they are not beneficial for them as sponsors. So they are targeting some specific only now, rather than general.
Thank you. And Ms. Lee? You're on mute. So.
I have to admit that I didn't understand the question correctly. Could you elaborate a little bit?
I can repeat. So with all the information that is open to the public about what servers are vulnerable, what's stopping the cyber criminals from exploiting all this information at scale?
I think it's a matter of simply they didn't have access to it. Not just criminal IP, our solution, but Shodan in US is getting really popular among hacker community simply because they can get the information from such search engine. So I have to say our product called Criminal IP is both popular for white hackers and dark hackers at the same time. So it will be future issue as well for our community to prevent hackers from using the CTI in a bad way as well. So that will be, right now we have CTI open, available for everyone, anyone in the world, and letting them use in a good way will be another challenge for this community as well. So I want to put that way.
Thank you, Ms. Lee. And finally, Mr. Park.
Okay. Sorry, but your question is like how attackers exploit the vulnerability or like that? Sorry about that.
My question is, all this information of vulnerable instances and computers are available right now at scale. So at one time you can see, for example, the example was Australia has 1,400 vulnerable servers right now. So what's stopping these bad guys from attacking us right now?
Okay. In case of dark web, there are lots of credential leaks, and so attackers can gather these kinds of data intelligence, and then they use this intelligence to data to access and penetrate into the company, and and then take over the permission to gain some sensitive data. Is it correct?
No problem. Yeah, so if I may, one answer from each side, maybe the online speakers and also one of Professor Kim and our David's talking is, how can Korea and Australia collaborate together to protect our critical infrastructure?
Well, I mean, I think we already do. We collaborate with the Korean CERT, so that KR CERT CC. So we do that. Again, I think I come back to the networks and building up those relationships and sharing of information, whether that's tools, process, people, information, threat intelligence. We have a common cause, and we should pursue those relationships more and more, make them stronger for this to address this cause.
Thank you. And would Ms. Lee or Mr. Kwok like to answer this? How can we work together?
Sure. I think while I was talking to a lot of security officials in Korea, the biggest problem that we face, not just as business-wise, but overall, the issue is that the companies and organizations are not really fully aware where their security vulnerabilities are. So they still heavily depend on the traditional solutions like wait and capture the attacks, wait and solve the problem solutions. But the problem is that the technology of penetration and attack gets ever sophisticated. So it's very important to raise the awareness first, so that how the technology of cyber attack is getting sophisticated. So I think it's not only Korea and Australia's issue, it's the scholar part, the academic part, and the commercial industry part work together to raise the awareness. That will be the biggest topic, I think, the biggest issue, I believe.
Thank you. Very good answer. So with that, I'll conclude my panel. Apologies for the overrun of the time. So let's thank our panelists. Thank you very much. Any further questions, please feel free to ask the questions to me, and I'm happy to pass it on to the speakers as well. Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Lee.
Thank you.